All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Conversations, where we hope to create conversational adventures through fun, challenging, yet meaningful questions. My name is Andre. Amongst other things, I'm driven, I'm ambitious, I'm energetic. I'm also a life coach, a teacher, a husband, a PowerPoint game creator. And yeah, I'm a wearer of many hats, basically. Joining me today is fellow mindset coach, Rochelle Skead. Rochelle, hello.
Hi, Andre, and hi, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here and thank you for joining me for this conversation, which hopefully will be unstoppable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. In a minute, I'm going to share my screen and we'll just hop right in. I'm going to throw you into the deep end basically straight away. So be prepared. All right. Can you see my screen?
I can.
All right. Okay. So unstoppable conversations. And when you're ready, you can tell me to start.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So the first part of this game is basically just I'm gonna ask you, who are you? So this is the question that I'm posing to you. Who are you? And you'll notice there's a bar on the right-hand side. That's kind of your timer. I think you've got between 30 to 45 seconds just to tell everybody as quickly as you can, as much as you can, who are you? So I'm going to start in three, two,
Okay.
go.
All right. So I'm Rochelle. I am a mum. I'm a wife. I am a very curious individual. I have a very hungry brain for information, for learning. I am a mentee as well as a life coach. So I take everything that I learn from others and I hand it over to others. I love to move. I'm very sporty. So I think wrapping it all up in one bundle, I'm a curious individual that loves to share everything that I know with everybody I come across.
Wow, that was beautiful. That was so succinct. Thank you for sharing. Wow. A lot of people struggle with that question, but it's nice to know, to see that you kind of like dove into it head first.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I share your love of learning and curiosity and sharing things. For me, there's no other way to live, kind of. I don't know how you feel about that.
Absolutely. I think that when we stop learning, it's when we start dying. I think we have to continue learning because the minute that we stop feeding our brains and we stop going forwards compared to the rest of the world, we're going backwards and it just doesn't go anywhere. We just I don't know if you've read the book, The Slight Edge. It is the most amazing book, but you're either living on an upward curve or you're living on a downward curve.
Mm.
And if you're not learning, you're on a downward curve, and it only gets worse from where you are.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I don't think there's room for kind of stagnation or staying level. Yeah. Um, what about your kind of, so you kind of constantly feed your mind. What about your body? Do you exercise a lot or kind of stay
Daily.
engaged in that way?
No, daily. I'm a Pilates instructor, so Pilates is part of my life, but I also have just come back from the gym. I've done a
Oh,
weight session. And if I'm not doing that, I'm walking on the beach or I'm paddling on the river. So I love movement. It's been part of my life always. And I don't think you can separate the mental, emotional, and physical aspects. So
mm,
it's really important to be physically active if you want
mm.
to keep your mind active.
Exactly, exactly. You mentioned before that you kind of got into kinesiology and you're a Pilates and yoga instructor. Can you tell everybody like how did it evolve from focusing on those bodily movements and things and into like kind of mindset and life coaching and things like that?
Well, it was definitely a journey that I was pushed along. So when I got divorced, I decided to do what I know best, which I think everybody knows. Everyone tends to do that. We go, oh, I know something about this. I could do that as a career. So
Mm,
movement was what I knew. So I decided to study classical Pilates. So I did that and I started my own studio and it was going really well. But I would see that literally my clients would twist, their alignment would corkscrew over a weekend, for instance. And I really wanted to find out why. So I did different modalities to find out what is going on. And eventually I found specialized kinesiology, which is energy medicine.
okay.
So it's kind of a merge of a blend of classical Chinese medicine. There's a lot of chiropractic in it. fascinating stuff. But the answer to that story is actually fight and flight. It's stress. So when we go into flight, we actually neurologically twist and rotate towards the right for most people. So we get all of those hip and shoulder things, the wry neck and the back pains and the frozen shoulders and the sciatic pains and things like that. But I was still, that started feeding me when I started learning kinesiology, because now you're bringing in emotional aspects, you're bringing in metaphysics and how your body speaks your mind. And so the mindset stuff started. And I did a protocol called Psych K, which is the originator is Rob Williams, which works with subconscious programming, which is even more towards what are we thinking and what are we saying and how is it impacting us and the world around us.
Yeah.
And then because I was working with clients, you end up talking and they asking things, so you end up life coaching. So I thought, no, I better do life coaching so I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I got into life coaching. So it was just this eternal thing. And then I was incredibly lucky to be accepted by this private mentorship group who are teaching me to build business assets. But that is all about mindset. Entrepreneurial mindset is a thing. And it fascinates me how that impacts everything in our world. If you read Napoleon Hill's books, or if you read Dale Carnegie, or if you read so many of these business books, are talking about mindset and talking about how we shift our world by what we're thinking and what we're speaking. So it really gelled with the kinesiology and the journey that I've been brought along all the way back from the physical. So I kind of started outside with muscle and bone, and I've worked my way in down to the very energetic level of thought.
Yeah.
And it all fascinates me.
Yeah. It sounds like you're really passionate about everything that you do. And it seems like kind of going into mindset coaching was kind of your upward curve, Um, in a way, it seems like you kind of had to transition towards that to stop yourself from stagnating, or at least to keep going on that exponential growth curve.
I think, yes, it wasn't anything that I deliberately followed. I just followed the dots. There's such a lovely um, couple of things. Fear and faith are two sides of the same coin. And for both of them, you're believing in something that you cannot prove. So
Mm.
you're afraid something bad will happen, but you've got no proof it will. You're believing that something, or you have faith that something good would happen. You've got no proof that it will. So either way, you're believing in something that you can't prove.
Yeah.
We're always aiming for our next dot, to hit the next dot in our life. And we're always so afraid we're not going to hit it. There's so many questions and we go through such angst to try and when we're moving forward. But if you look back, all the dots always join.
Yeah. That's true.
So we need to know we're just going to hit the next dot and have some faith in that,
Mm.
which will calm us down. We wouldn't suffer from stress as much. But it is difficult to know that we're actually headed for the next dot and it's there and we'll get there and we'll hit it because we always do.
We always do, yeah. That reminds me of the other day. I was kind of thinking about fear as well. My wife and I, we went kind of snowboarding for a little day trip just north of Beijing. And I was thinking about how the last time we went snowboarding, I was horrible. But this time I was kind of slightly better at the things that I was horrible at last time, but I hadn't practiced in between. And I realized that it was that fear. That fear, a lot of people kind of see it as a signal to stop, but I see it as a kind of a signal for you to know that just on the other side of that there's going to be growth and the next dot, like you say. Um, yeah, I really want people to remember fear, it's sign of growth, and the next dot, like you say, instead of kind of letting it define you, we should let it push us towards growth and towards the next dot. Yeah.
Absolutely, because I think anytime that we're afraid of something, it's a challenge that if we overcome it, we experience growth. You always experience some kind of development through the challenges and the things that we're afraid of. And if you don't go into that, you just continue to feel fear
Mm,
because that lesson is there for us to overcome, to learn and to grow from. So if we turn our back on the lesson, it'll come up from a different direction in a different way
that's true.
until we learn it. And so it's kind of being the doing person that I am, I prefer to get it out of the way now if I can.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's kind of those patterns, because of people's mindsets, we often attract like the same cycle of events into our lives, and they just kind of manifest in different ways. And it also reminds me of I can't remember where I saw this once, but basically, if you imagine like your comfort zone as a kind of circle, and just
Hmm.
on the edge of that circle, that kind of line, that's where the fear could start taking you over. But if you just push past that fear, you kind of expand your circle, and your space of comfort just gets a little bit bigger until you push it and you get to that line where fear comes over you. But again, if you push through it, your circle gets bigger and you just get more comfortable and more, you gain more mastery over just more things in your life. Um, yeah.
I think, yeah, I have to agree with you. I think it's very much, it's like anything. If you're going to push weights, if you just, you have to work your way through overcoming that next weight. Or if you're going to run a 21K, maybe 10Ks is comfortable, but just getting to that 15 is where it's difficult. Anytime that we're outside of our comfort zone, the more we practice being outside the comfort zone, the uncomfort zone eventually becomes comfortable because we're so used to being in the uncomfort zone.
It's
That
true.
just becomes part of who we are.
That's
So
true.
that's my challenge. That's my challenge for the year, is to make my uncomfort zone my comfort zone.
Yeah, that's a great challenge. Yeah. I hope more people take on that challenge because I think there'd be a lot of growth and a lot more kind of positive steps in the world in general in terms of like the
Yeah.
solutions or where developments and things are going. Yeah.
Yes, and I think yeah, just keep pushing, just keep trying, because if we can stay open and curious, there's so much to explore. But we cut ourselves off and we keep ourselves small because we're too afraid to explore.
Mm. That's like, it feels like the crux of the kind of work that we do is sometimes people wonder why mindsets matter because a lot of people see it as an abstract thing, but your mindset is literally the driver of every single thing that you do in your life. It's the most real and tangible thing that there is because with the wrong mindset, you're never going to experience the things in your life that you want to experience.
No, and with the wrong mindset, you're going to focus on how much of a victim you are and everything that happens to you. If
Yeah.
you can shift that to the mindset, to a growth mindset of things are happening for me, how do I learn through this experience? How does this grow me? I was actually talking to a client yesterday who has been separated from his grandchild because his daughter has now decided she's not talking to her father anymore because he's done whatever she claims he's done. And he's separated from his daughter. And he finds it very upsetting. And I said to him, but there's another way of looking at it. What your granddaughter is going through your separation from you, is preparing her for other things in her life
Mm,
where she's going to need these skills.
yeah.
So you're actually giving her a lesson, which is an amazing thing for her to learn now because she's safe. Yes, she doesn't get to be with her grandfather like she used to be, but she will overcome that and she'll grow through it. And it's preparing her for life.
Yeah.
And if you can just look at things with a different perception, look at it from a different point of view, often we don't suffer as much.
Mm,
There's, there's a gift in everything if we can just
true.
find it and have a
It,
mindset that tends to look for it.
yeah, it's baffling how people kind of get sucked into their own perspective a lot of the time. I mean, it happens to all of us, because
Mhm.
we're living our life every single day. Nobody else is living it. But sometimes it's just as simple as like putting your problem, pretending it's your friend's problem or somebody else's problem, or just asking their advice or getting another opinion. It just the solution comes so quickly and it seems so obvious, but it's just because we're kind of stuck in our own world and our own perceptions and perspectives a lot of the time. And I think it's easier that way sometimes. Wouldn't you agree that it's very easy to complain and criticize and stay stuck in a victim mindset? Because it means kind of you don't have to take responsibility. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. We don't have to take responsibility, but it's also a habit. So Joe Dispenza's work, he talks about how we get addicted to the hormones of stress or the so he explains it as every thought fires certain neurotransmitters which release certain neuropeptides into the body. So the thought happens and the chemical release happens in the body. And we get addicted to those chemicals. So
Yeah.
the chemicals of stress are different to the chemicals of anger, which are different to the chemicals of joy, and the chemicals of, I don't know, love or hate, or all of them. They each have a different cocktail, and we
Yeah.
get addicted to that. So then we kind of trying to improve ourselves and get better, but then the cells are going, help, where's my stress? I'm not getting any stress. I want the stress. Give me my fix. So
Yeah.
it goes quite deeply into us. But I think that to me, mindset is everything, because we always have a choice. We always have a choice to do something differently. So we can choose to give in to those hormones. We can choose to give in to those chemicals and that need for a chemical fix, or we can choose to overcome it.
Mm.
We can choose to overcome the habit, or we can choose to just fall back into the comfort of the habit. And I think that's where mindset makes such a difference, is what is your go-to? Do you go
Mm.
back to the comfort zone, or do you step into the uncomfort zone and grow and become curious and go forward and go up?
That ties in a lot with your beliefs as well, because if your belief is that stepping out of your comfort zone will lead to something bad or negative or failure, then most likely you're going to default to that belief and you're not going to take that step. Yeah.
Yes. So I think that our evidence creates our beliefs. If we've stepped out before and went badly, then we go, no, if I step out, it's going to go badly, because the evidence creates the belief, and the belief creates your expectation.
Mm. So how would
But
you
I,
how would you go about helping somebody challenge a belief? Um, I can't think of an example right now, but because I mean we all have kind of built up a few negative beliefs throughout our lifetime. But how would you go about helping somebody challenge a negative belief, like challenging that evidence, like you said, in order to kind of create a new belief? What's your kind of process there?
that is really hard. So I
Yeah.
work with it in a couple of ways. With Psyche, we can reprogram beliefs, which is amazing because it's really easy and really quick. So I can work with clients with that, and I work with them online even. I mean, it's so
Mm.
accessible. It's amazing. So if you are, let's say I was 3 years old and my brother hit me over the head with a pool noodle and he stole my lollipop, and I'm going to tell myself a story about what happened. So my mother didn't protect me. I was abused. My neurology goes, oh my word, you nearly died. So it's
Yeah.
going to open a folder that wants to keep you safe. So anything that resonates with that is it's going to be kind of flagged somewhere in your system. And those are the defining moments, the memories that never die. You know, you speak to a 70-year-old and they remember that they couldn't spell the word difficult, or it's
Mm.
those funny things that stand out, because those are open folders, and we can go back and we can close those folders by changing perception, because now you're an adult and the way you perceived it as a child may not make sense anymore if you actually go and investigate it. And that helps to shift perception and shift belief and change evidence quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um, and then sometimes I think something that really hit home with me was, if you think of a speedboat, it has a big wake behind it in the water.
Mm-hmm.
So the way we do life is that we kind of do life thinking that that wake in the water is going to steer the speedboat where it goes, which makes no sense.
It doesn't, yeah.
The wake is just evidence that the speedboat has been there,
Mm.
but it doesn't define where the boat is going at all. And so our evidence, we tend to look at it and go, well, that's where we're going because the tap went badly before, so it's going to go badly again. That's what the evidence says, but it's actually just waves in the water. It's got no impact on our future.
That's true. And often evidence, well, not often, even evidence in itself is seen and interpreted through your own perception as well. So evidence might look different to different people at different times, simply because you're viewing it through your own lenses of your beliefs, your values, your emotions, your upbringing. And in that sense,
Absolutely.
it's important to get somebody else to help you to challenge your beliefs, because the way they look at the evidence is different to the way that you look at it, and therefore different conclusions will be drawn. Um, and
I
I
think that's,
yeah, you can speak.
sorry, Amber, I think that's why our work as a life coach is so important, because we can't always crack our own box. We can't always see beyond the evidence. and see a different picture. And I really think that when it comes to the work that we do, and it's even just as a life coach, it is energetic work because you're working with another person. And it's not one person and one person, two people working there. Somehow, one and one goes to 11 when you're working with somebody because there's just that extra magic that comes when you're working with somebody to the point where I can ask you a question about something I'm stuck with, and I'll come up with the answer myself just because I've verbalized it to you.
Yes. That was
Do you find that too in your work?
like, I mean, I don't think, I don't know how long you've been a coach, but I don't think I've been a coach as long as you for sure. Um, but that was one of the most mind-blowing things that I realized when I first started, like just right after my training and working with somebody else who went through the same training. Like, we weren't even great coaches. We were just literally people who had finished their training. And just through speaking to one another and coaching one another, as capable as we were, that energetic exchange, and we were able to solve problems and work through evidence that just by virtue of speaking to each other. And even though we had all the training and the knowledge and the know-how of how to do it ourselves and help other people do it, it's just not the same when somebody else is there. That exchange of energy is incredible. It's such a rush. Yeah, it's wonderful, and it creates so much change and transformation. And that's why we can say and tell people that we can create change and we can create transformation, because there is energy. It's evident, and it has the power to change everything. It's such a wonderful feeling.
No, it is. And I think another thing that is huge is the accountability of having a coach, because you won't do something for yourself, but you'll do it because you want to save face in front of somebody else.
That's true.
So it's that accountability, which is also huge when it comes to, people say, why should I have a coach? I can do all of this myself. But no, you don't. You can, but you don't, because we don't always lead ourselves that well.
Yeah. I mean, even coaches have coaches, right?
Absolutely.
That's how important coaches are. Even coaches have coaches. I want
Yeah, and
people.
I think the coaches realize how important it is to have a coach.
Yeah,
And that's why coaches have coaches, because they know the impact that it has on your life.
certainly. Yeah. I want people, whoever's listening right now, take note of two things. Number one, coaches have coaches. That's how valuable coaches are. And number two, like you mentioned earlier, subconscious reprogramming is real. Like, it works, it happens. It's not science fiction. And in a way, we can't dive into that deeply now, because the only way most people will believe it works for sure is to experience it. Um, but definitely, as you were talking about, the files and the experiences and the folders and how beliefs forms and the memories, um, yeah, it just resonated with me a lot. And I want people to realize that that's truth, it's reality, it's how it works. It does work. Yeah.
We're in fact not. We're so similar to computers in so many ways. I was having conversations with my husband the other day. He works on dry brains, I say, and I work on wet brains. So he works in IT, and I work with the kinesiology and
Yeah.
the similarities. The drivers. The driver is a program which connects your screen to your hard drive, basically the computer. But if the drivers are corrupted, then your screen doesn't work, or your mouse doesn't work, or your speakers don't work, or your printer doesn't work. And the drivers in us as people are things like belief and humility, and they are the things that make us go forward in life.
Yeah.
And when we can realize that and understand how impacted we are by life, and we're a system of programs, we're a computer. It's very, very similar, and it's a very easy way of looking at it.
That's true. It reminds me of also, when I just finished my training and my coach was coaching me, and he used the analogy of riding a bicycle. So if you imagine you're just riding your bicycle on a kind of straight road going towards some objective or the finish line or wherever, and you've got all of these kind of beliefs and values and emotions and your attitudes and your mindset in general is kind of always there with you while you're riding your bicycle. So even though you pedal as hard as you want to, you put in that just a million times of effort, just really hard conscious effort. If your mindset and your beliefs are not aligned with where you want to go, it's like there's somebody basically like shifting the handlebars of the bike, like causing you to go off course, causing you to wobble. And if you don't correct that kind of I wouldn't say flaw in your mindset, but if you don't kind of correct your mindset or realign it back to where you would like it to go, then you're just going to keep steering off course and steering off course. That's quite a helpful analogy, I think, for anybody who kind
That's
of,
a
yeah, who wants to understand why a mindset is so powerful. Because I've never tried it, but I think trying to ride a bike while somebody's pulling your handlebar with ropes or something isn't very easy. Yeah, I don't want to try
that's
it.
not gonna work. That's not gonna work at all, but it's an amazing analogy. That's an awesome analogy, Andre.
I wish I came
It
up with it myself, but I didn't.
it's okay. I think we come up with things and we share them with others so that we can all help people because we all resonate with different analogies, and I
Mm,
think we need to have a bunch of them to be able to get the message across to different people.
mm,
Mindset definitely. A lot of the time, if we're expecting things not to work, because that was the evidence, we can be doing everything, we can be doing all the work, but if the belief is not there, it just
mm,
doesn't work.
yeah,
You
it's
know, why do some people work so hard in their lives and they never get anywhere? And
mm,
other people do far less and their businesses fly. And it's more about belief in yourself, belief in your ability, belief that it's going to work. To me, it's like 2% effort and 98% comes down to mindset, belief, thought processes. What are we thinking? How do we speak to ourselves? Mindset, it comes back to that more than anything else.
Loved recently to focus on my self-talk, like the way I speak to myself, because it seems like a silly thing, um, if you don't think about it too deeply. But the way that we speak to ourselves and the stories that we keep creating over and over again, they become real because we keep repeating these same stories to ourselves, and if that story is negative or at least not positive or great or exactly what we want, then and we repeat it often enough, it's going to become our truth. And this plays it comes into play with little things and big things. For example, let's say that you've been invited to an event over the weekend, and you maybe you don't want to go, you think it's going to be boring, and you keep telling yourself, oh, it's going to be horrible. And it seems like a small thing to be telling yourself this, but actually, if you keep telling it to yourself throughout the whole week, that's going to become the truth. And when the time comes to go to that event, most likely you'll kind of create that reality for yourself where you'll find ways to not enjoy it, to kind of fulfill that belief that you've now created about the event. And it seems kind of small and silly when you think about it, like, oh, Andre, I just kind of made up the silly story about this party this weekend. But in the long run, the way you speak about that little thing filters into everything else. And sooner or later, you've got a new belief with all this evidence and emotion attached to it. But if you kind of scratch below the surface, the evidence is actually the evidence that you created to support the belief that you created as well. So it kind of it wouldn't pass in a court of law, I can tell you that. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. You've got the reticular activating system in your brain, which is like a Google search engine. So
Mm,
if you feed negative stuff into Google, you're going to get back what you're feeding. And it's the same
mm,
with us. If we're telling ourselves all the time, I'm going to the party, no one's going to talk to me, the food's going to be terrible, then we have this bias before we even get there. So the
mm,
brain is going to search engine everything that matches with that.
mm,
So we will, without knowing it, pick up the worst food. We will have conversations with the worst people. It,
mm.
you know, it's not that the good people aren't there, but your bias is set. Your Google search engine is set to the negative, and so that's what you're going to pick up on.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean the positive isn't there. So you will have another person who will say it was the best party of the century because their bias was different.
Mm. It's true. And it kind of brings it back to how we're kind of computers and computer programs. Because if you think about,
Absolutely.
like, if you keep Googling or going on YouTube and searching for the same things, the next time you just open the app, like let's say the next time you kind of open your mind and your just thoughts come through, you're gonna find the things that you searched for previously. You know, the videos are gonna
Exactly.
pop up of the things that you've kind
The
of,
evidence is all there.
yeah, yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we've got memories of how the last party went, and then we go, oh, we're going party, and you open the party app, and the party app is, oh, it goes badly, and so you already now are biased towards the next one going badly
Mhm.
because we're such creatures of habits, and we are so focused on what is instead of what we would like.
Mhm.
So the whole thing of asking it is given comes down to what are we asking for? We're always given what we ask for, but what are we asking for?
Mhm.
So in our daily speech and in our daily thoughts, are we asking for what we want, or are we asking for more of what we don't have?
Mhm. That's true. So, I mean, we haven't played the game at all, but but I like where this conversation is going. So I think two questions just came to mind. If you don't mind, would you like to keep speaking about them?
Not at all. Absolutely.
Okay, I feel like this is tremendously valuable. So yeah, I'd like to keep going as well. So do you have do you have any advice for people on how to ask that question in the correct way? That would be my first question. And do you have any advice for people? I like to focus a lot on visualization as well, and I'm wondering if you do the same, and what is your how you kind of help people through that process, if you don't mind sharing it.
Okay, so let's just clarify. How do I help people to ask the question the right way? So
Yes.
what are we asking for?
Yeah.
So I think that I don't want to go in too much into something that people find uncomfortable, but we all have gut feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that our soul, if you like, knows what's right and what's wrong for us. It has, like, I think of Aladdin and the lamp. You know that Disney movie where you have Aladdin and he's this great big genie and the little tiny lamp down at the bottom. And I kind of feel like our energetic soul, the energetic version of us, as opposed to the physical
Yeah.
human part of us. The energetic part of us is way bigger than what fits in a human body. So the body is like this little lamp that's down there, but the genie, that is us, can actually see our life path and where we're headed, if you want to put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that it can guide us is through feelings. So if you do something and it feels good, you want to do more of that. If you're doing something and it feels bad, it might feel sad, it might feel depressing, it might feel heavy, it might feel um, that we don't want to do it, we might come up with resistance, then often I think that that means we're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So
So,
Wayne Dyer
so feelings
says,
kind of guide.
your feelings are your guidance system. So if it, Wayne Dyer says as well in his book, he's got a book, Power of Intention, and he says, when we feel good, we are close to God. So when we feel good, we're doing what we should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
If we feel happy, if we feel joy, if we feel excitement, that's what we should be following. We need to be following our bliss.
Yeah.
If we're feeling depressed and down and we are in the wrong direction, it's like playing that game when we were kids, hot and cold. Oh, you say to them, no, you're getting warm, no, you're hot, you're hot, you're hot. And it's like the more elevated our emotions are, the more excited, the closer we are to our bliss, that's the direction we should be going in. And
Yeah.
that's how our soul guides us.
That's true.
So do what feels good. Have fun. Take time to feel joy because that's what feeds us. It's what lifts our energy.
Yeah.
And anytime that we're connecting with other people, if our energy is really low, we're not able to connect. And then we go, oh, but no one wants, because we've got no energy. Then do something that you enjoy, lift your energy, and you will find that you connect with other people much easier.
Mm. That's 100% true. It's 100% true. And in that sense, our emotions kind of drain our energy as well. If if you keep feeling those negative emotions like anger and sadness and even desperation, it drains your energy just by existing because it takes energy to kind of keep those emotions at bay and keep them from kind of
Yes.
taking you
I
over.
think they I think they really, if you think of the whole, sorry, we're having a glitch. I think if we have a continuum from energy to matter, energy has a much higher frequency, matter is a much more dense frequency.
Yeah.
So when we feel excited, I don't know, I always feel like I'm going to pop out of my own body.
Mm,
When you're excited, you have that high frequency that you feel like you're expanded,
mm,
as opposed to when we're depressed, we feel slow, we feel very heavy, we feel very dense.
yeah.
And so it's so dense feelings attract more, they resonate with more dense feelings and dense thoughts. And there's someone, and I can't remember who it is, that I read about. He talks about ants. He was looking on the counter the one day in his home, and he said, there's never one ant, there's always a bunch of them, there's always more. And he took the acronym automatic negative thoughts. And he says, as soon as you have one negative thought, very soon there's going to be another one, and before you know it, they are swarming all over you, these negative thoughts.
Yeah.
So we need to switch it up. So when you feel yourself going into that negative space, you need to think of something different. And then my clients say to me, how do I think of something different? So I can say, Andre, think of being at that resort where you were skiing.
Yeah.
Can you see a picture in your head?
Yeah, that was amazing. That's very
Okay, now think of being at home.
yeah,
How easy was it to change your thoughts?
pretty easy. Yeah.
It's so easy. Think of something that feels better.
Yeah.
So when you feel sad, think of something that feels better.
Yeah.
And then then you'll get another thought that feels better, and you'll get another thought that feels better. And I found in the tough times in my life that I just banned myself from thinking about a particular person or a particular topic, because it just took me down too far. So I would just go, no, you're not allowed to think of that, think of something else.
Yeah.
So it takes a bit of will, and it takes a bit of, personal grit, but anyone can do that because we can control our thoughts.
It's practice, isn't it? Because if
Yes.
if the first time you have the negative thought and you train yourself, you consciously decide to shift your thoughts to something more positive, it'll be difficult the first few times, but after a while, if you keep practicing that, it's almost like the negative thought will become a trigger for another positive thought. So the first part is kind of a lot of conscious effort, but after then, it kind of becomes easier to do, and you understand also how your body. You need to kind of understand what's happening in your body, how you're feeling, and what you're thinking, in order to shift your thoughts as well.
Yes. So
Yeah.
it takes a lot of awareness. We need to be more, and it's one of the reasons I think why I love Pilates is because you have to be present. You have to be inside your body. You can't be shoe shopping and you can't be cooking dinner. You need to take that time to just be inside your body, whatever it is, it is that you do, whether it's meditation, whether it is just sitting quietly, whether it is going for a run or a bike ride or something. We need to take time every day just to be inside our skin.
Yeah.
Go internal and feel, what are you feeling, and who's living inside here, get to know them, get to talk to them.
Yeah. Listen to yourself. In those moments, even if your thoughts are still kind of going about, they will be going about. But that's kind of a time for you to understand, where does your mind go to its when it's at default, right? Like when you're just not trying to think of something, what's your mind telling you? And
Absolutely.
and take a note of that, because that's probably something that it's telling you to heal or work through, or kind of that's indicating a belief that you have that might not be in line with where you actually would like to go.
Absolutely. And you mentioned healing. So here's a thought. Do we need to heal? Do we need to overcome stuff from the past, or do we need to just think about something different? Because I find there's so many examples today of healing. There's a lot of healing modalities.
Mm,
I do it myself. but now people are going into past lives and everything, and I'm sure there's relevance there. But my thought around that is that my life is enough to deal with as it is right now.
Mm,
And do we actually create issues by going into what could have been or what was in the past? And we're not opening up a can of worms of a whole lot of more negative thoughts.
yeah,
And is
absolutely.
it easier to just focus on the now and focus on something that feels better in this world, in
Mm,
this day, where I am, and think of something better and think of something that is uplifting me? And how do I move forward from here? Because we can look backwards and we can look into all our past and all the healing and how broken we are. Or we can just go, you know what, this is where I am right now. And this is what we do with coaching. We don't delve into the past. We
yeah.
take from where we are now, we go, so how do we go forward? And I love that
Mm,
because we can get so stuck looking in the rearview mirror and going into that victim status again of poor me, this happened to me and this happened to me. Or we can go, you know what, it doesn't matter what happened to me in the past. Waves in the water, where do I go from here?
I prefer,
So
on your point, I prefer to see healing as kind of a more a learning process. So how I look at it is, let's say you're meditating or you're just in your skin, and something pops up, maybe a memory or a belief, something from your past, and the way I find kind of helps me to quote unquote heal, just for lack of a better word, is to learn from it instead of change it or sit in it. So if something pops up that just maybe wasn't great, it's a memory from a week ago or something I did or said to somebody, it doesn't make me feel good. I think just finding two, three, four, five things to learn from that. What can you tell yourself about that? What can you learn from it? How bad? Sometimes asking yourself, like, how bad was the impact really? Kind of helps you to realize that the thing that you thought was so terrible and horrible actually didn't impact your life so significantly and horribly than what you thought it did. So I find that when something pops up that's negative, learn from it, learn from what it's perhaps trying to tell me, and then, like you said, like, get straight back to the present, understand where I
yes,
am, focus on what I'd like to have, and move in that direction.
I totally agree. I think that everything that we go through, every challenge that we go through has a hidden gift.
Mm,
And if you can just find the hidden gift, it no longer is a challenge because it's happened for you. It hasn't happened to you anymore.
mm. I'd say a lot of the time, the gift is knowledge and preparation for what's to come. I don't know what you think about that.
Definitely, definitely. If you think back, look at the dots, times in your life where you were so stuck or you had such a hard time. And how did you grow through that, which helped you to subsequently grow through something else that was maybe tougher?
Mm,
And would you take your life without the first one? How would you have coped? You wouldn't have.
that's true. It, yeah. I want to take back to the two questions that I had
Yes,
previously,
sorry.
because
Rabbit
I,
hole.
I want to point out also, and I'd love your opinion on this, is there's such a fine line sometimes with how you think or the questions that you ask yourself. Um, and I'll use this example to illustrate. For example, I've heard some people say, so if their goal is to kind of be happier, right? Some people might ask themselves now, okay, so what question can I ask to be happy? And they'd ask themselves, how can I be happy? And in a way, I mean, that question is kind of a step in the right direction. But to me, it seems like the question implies that you might not be feeling happy right now, which in a way is a kind of it's a sign, it's a thought that you're sending to your mind and to your energetic self, So in that sense, there's kind of a fine line between what questions you're asking yourself that you're hoping will drive you towards where you'd like to go. For example, if you rephrase that question from how can I be happy to how can I be even happier than what I am right now, it immediately creates such a big shift in the meaning of the question and in how you're feeling, because the second question assumes that you're already happy and you're seeking more, whereas the first question could imply that you're not happy right now, you're sad right now, and that could trigger like a cascade of thoughts in the complete opposite direction to what you're actually seeking. What are your thoughts
Mm.
on that kind of like that line between that balance kind of finding the right
I
mindset.
think a lot of that goes again to attitude and to mindset. So,
Mm,
what is your default? Because if your default is always to go towards the lack mentality of there's a lack of happiness right now. So think of any context as a stick, a continuum. So you've got the lack of happiness at one end of the stick, and you've got absolute joy and happiness at the other end of the stick.
yeah.
We are continually traveling between the two. And our thoughts will send us towards the lack of happiness or towards better happiness.
Mm,
So the way that I always work with it is, okay, is this thought sending me towards what I don't want, towards the lack of what I have, or is it sending me towards the desire of what I do want?
yeah.
So when you look at it that way, everything's relative. So I can have a thought that's happier than this thought, or I can have a thought that's less happy than this thought. Which direction am I moving in? Am I moving towards the lack of what I want, or am I moving towards the creation of what I desire, what I want in my life?
It's such a fine
And to
line.
me, yeah, but it's not a line; it's a continuum. And so there's this. Think of a little matchbox car or a little train on a little track. Is it either going towards, let's take money, for instance, which is something in everybody's life.
Yeah.
Are we traveling towards the lack of money, or are we traveling towards abundance? What
Yeah.
are we traveling towards? So I can have a thought that says, I can't afford this. Whoops, I'm going back towards this one. Then I can have the thought of, I would like to, well,
Even how
let me
can I
come up with
afford it?
another thought. How can I afford it would be going in the right direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking of it's too expensive is going in the wrong direction, but um, if you can play a game of, I heard a lovely idea of walking around with a virtual whatever $100 note or whatever in your pocket, and then going, oh, I could buy this if I wanted to.
Mm,
I can afford this. So you're creating the thought process of I could buy this if I want to, and if you actually had the money, would you actually buy it, or would it no longer be important to you? So
yeah.
often we're wanting something because we can't have it. We're not wanting it because we actually want it. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
It makes sense.
So, we want things, but if we actually had plenty in our lives, we might not want that thing anymore.
Mm.
But we're so
It's
driven. It's a luck thing. It's like we have to gather all kinds of stuff around us. But sometimes we actually don't want some of that stuff, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be money related. We gather thoughts around us. So we have this, but sometimes you kind of think about it. An example, when I fell pregnant with my first daughter, I was living in a caravan in the bush in a geological field camp. And I was thinking, oh, I've got to buy a pram for this baby. And I thought, you know what? I live in the bush. I can't push a pram around. I live in a caravan. And if I go to the shops, I go alone. I can't push a supermarket trolley and a pram. Why am I buying a pram? But it was such a program. And it hit me so hard that so often we're wanting things because it's a program. It's what society dictates. But I didn't actually need it.
yeah.
So then all of a sudden you're free from that because you suddenly realize this is not something I need. So we can look at life and see what am I feeling I need to have, which maybe I don't.
Yeah. That's a great question to ask. It seems the more you speak, it seems like the way to uncovering what your mindset is actually quite simple. It seems like if you just look at your thoughts and you listen to your emotions, you're kind of going into the gateway into what your mindset is, what your beliefs are. And from there, it's kind of connecting the dots back deeper and deeper into what your belief is. And then from that stage, you can kind of reprogram your belief. And all of a sudden, it'll circle back to your thoughts, and your thoughts will become more aligned with what you'd like to have. For example, your example of, oh, it's too expensive, or I can't afford that. If that thought arises, if you take a second and just kind of examine that thought examine what's the evidence, which might be the next thought, the evidence for that thought, what happened previously that made you think that. And you kind of examine the evidence a bit further and you look at, well, how did I interpret this evidence, or how did my beliefs or my circumstances at that time interpret the evidence? All of a sudden, you've got actually a pretty, I'm not going to say simple, but there is at least a path towards your beliefs, the deeper things that are driving you. And yeah, I feel like I want to share that to people and make that clear that if you listen to your emotions and you listen to your thoughts there and you take time to examine them, there could be a clear path to creating the change that you'd like to have so that you can move to what you want to have. Does that resonate with you at all?
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, we have choice. That's what it's all about. What are we choosing? Are we choosing the negative self-talk? Are we choosing positive self-talk? Are we choosing to follow the evidence, or are we choosing to create new evidence? And sometimes the fear that comes up, fear is of false evidence appearing real.
Mm,
We've got no proof it's going to go badly. Can't we just find faith and go, what if it goes right? So just a funny little life example. I've spent the last 4 years living here in George. My husband has been in another town, a couple of 100 kilometers away, because he was having to sell his business and sell the house and everything. And it's been a long 4 years because we've been living separately. And I kept on saying, when the time is right, the house will sell and we will find the perfect house.
mm,
Because going from a little platteland town and buying in George, where the property is really expensive, just seemed impossible. How were we ever going to do it? And I just continually said, when the time's right, everything will work out.
mm,
And so our house sold cash sale in November. And at the beginning of December, the first house we walked into to go and have a look at was beyond our wildest dreams perfect. But we've manifested that by just continually having faith and going, there is the right house for us. We created it,
mm,
but it's keeping the thoughts there. If I continually thought there's not going to be anything, we're never going to be afford, we wouldn't have been able to. And you just see how everything around us, if the house had sold a year ago, number one, our perfect house wouldn't be for sale. Number two, the prices hadn't dropped yet. But so many cogs and wheels had to turn. So there is divine timing to everything. And we need to have faith that when the time is right, whatever it is that we're wanting will happen, as long as we're focusing on what we want and not of what we're afraid we're not going to, is what are we not going to get? Are we focusing on what we're going to get, or what we're not going to get?
mm. I love that. That's such a beautiful example. And congratulations on the house, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I know we're really excited, and now we've got to wait to move in because the other people have to move out, and I'm feeling like, oh, just want time to go flying by. But there's a magic to life, and we have the power over that,
Mm,
because it comes down to what are we thinking,
yeah. It's funny
and it's a battle.
as soon as you said that, when you said we created that, I thought of how often when something bad happens, we're like, oh, this is my fault. This is all my fault. Even if kind of what happened had nothing to do with you. But when something good happens, a lot of the times we default to, oh, I'm so lucky. Oh, so lucky. This is so lucky that this happened. And when you said that I created this, it kind of triggered that in me, saying that people attribute good things to luck and bad things to their own fault, when when in fact people should attribute good things to them creating it. They should attribute everything to them creating it, in a sense. We
We're
can't
creating,
control everybody's actions, but we can control a large part of our life. And
we
and
control more than we realize, because our thoughts become things. So I've created in the negative hugely, hugely. A classic example, I have a surf ski and we put it in at the canoe club at Ebb and Flow, and it was just in a cage. And I said to Dion, anyone can use our boats. What's stopping anyone from taking our boats
mm,
and using them? And it was a locked cage, but anyone in the club could use the boat. And the agreement was just, you don't use other people's boats. So the one day I go off and I go and take my ski out, and someone's been using my ski. All the settings are different, everything's I was so angry and I fumed about it for a couple of days. And eventually Dion came, we were going to chain our boats. And we went on the Saturday morning to chain the boats. And as I was driving there, I thought, what if we get there and both the boats are gone? Sure as nuts, we get there and there's just 2 holes where our boats should have been in the cage. And this guy comes in with these 2 kids in our boat. And I created that because it was something I was so worried about. I created that. So he was there to co-create with me and it all worked, but that was my own creation. And so often, why, when we're so afraid of something, does it happen? And we go, look, I was so right, because we create that. When the thought is negative, worry is a powerful energy. We create with that powerful energy just as much. And then we don't think that we can create positive, and yet we create negative stuff all the time. If we can just transfer that and go, we're just as capable of creating something positive. We just have to believe it.
People should listen to that line, yeah. Definitely. How do you let me get the phrasing right here. So I want to follow on with your example. You created the situation where somebody else was using your surf skis, right? Surf skis.
Yes. Yeah.
And let's say, for example, you didn't have all this knowledge about mindset and you weren't such a strong-minded person. How would you go about helping somebody not internalize that? For example, I can think of a lot of people, I can see a lot of people saying, oh, I created this bad thing. And now they kind of internalize this onto themselves. Instead of seeing it as one action, they see it as this is who they are. They are the creator of bad things. How do you kind of help people not to fall into that mindset trap, if I can put it like that?
Well, I think the most important thing is we need to realize that we're capable of creating. So just choose different ways of creating. And again, it's being aware of what am I saying? What is my speech to myself and to other people? What do I speak about? Who do I associate with? If you have a teenager, you don't want him hanging around with drug addicts and gangsters. Why? Because the power of association is so strong. The chances of him becoming an addict or a gangster are huge. So who are we hanging around with? What are we allowing ourselves to hear? What are we listening to? How is it impacting us on a thought process level, on an emotional level, on a speech level? We end up picking up mannerisms of speech with people around us.
That's my
and we end up speaking the same. Exactly. And I'm exactly the same. If you're going to put me in a country, I'm going to pick up a twang I will be speaking like they are in no time without even realizing that I'm doing it. It's the power of association. And so if we find that we're continually creating negative things in our life, how do we make that a positive? Find a coach. And get them to help you to pick up, where am I going wrong? What am I saying? Where is my thought process corrupted, if you want to say it that?
I'll make that the slogan of this conversation. Find a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Because sometimes we need someone outside of us. The program is so strong, we can't always see the program. Somebody else can see it, but we can't. And sometimes it helps to have someone outside of us saying, did you hear what you said right then? Because we say it without realizing at all. And it's been so much fun. My husband is on as much of a growth path as I am. And so we catch each other. And I will go into a negative, and he will go, are you listening to what you're saying? Are we not trying to be more positive? And I go, yes, because the habit is to go into that rabbit hole, into that big story of how bad everything is and how it's not going to work out. And it's just practice. It's practicing catching yourself, practicing awareness, practicing that. Because at the end of the day, it is up to us.
And practice
is up to all of us.
Anybody can practice, I think.
Anybody can practice, but you have to practice the right thing. And we're so good at practicing the wrong thing. But it's just as easy to practice the right thing. But we've told ourselves that it's hard to learn to do something differently, but How do we learn to do the wrong thing so easily?
Yeah. When you started mentioning that, I thought of last night. My Because my wife and I told you that we're making a few big decisions this year. Things are changing, things are happening, and we've made a commitment to each other as well to kind of be positive and help each other find the right thoughts, the right emotions, the right kind of frequency to enable us to get where we want to go, because we have a real clear vision of where we want to go, and we know that this is incredibly important to us. So we're helping each other out to kind of, if one of us falters or gets negative, we kind of bring each other back up to the same level, the level of where our goals and our dreams.
Fantastic.
And last night we just think we're doing the dishes or finishing up with cooking or something, and she mentioned something, and immediately I'm quite like a frugal person. um this is one of the things I've been working on. I don't like spending a lot of money on stuff, and even when something exciting gets suggested, it's perhaps something that I even want to do, immediately my first thought goes to, but can I afford that? How does that affect my salary? Da, 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 da. Even if I've got enough money for it, like this, I know that it's just kind of a trigger, a thought that happens. And last night we were doing the dishes, and my wife suggested something, and in my head, I knew, I was like, "Oh, that's great. That sounds so much fun." And the next moment, just all of a sudden, boom, went to money. I was like, "But how's that going to work with the money?" Da, 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 da. And I'm sharing this because I actually just want to say I'm so proud of myself, because in that moment, I stopped myself and I apologized to my wife. I was like, "I'm sorry. This is not what we should be doing. I'm really sorry, and I'll work on that, etc." And it's also to show that even if you have knowledge about everything, and mindset this, mindset that, how beliefs work, and how you internalize reality, like it happens to all of us. It's literally just a choice and a practice, and changing your automatic responses, basically. Yeah.
It's amazing that you caught yourself doing that, because that is half of the battle won, is when we're aware of it. You can't change something you're not aware of. So you've actually come a long way down the path because you're aware of it now. Now you catch yourself.
Yeah.
So you're changing the direction, you're changing the point that you're going to, which is fantastic.
It's only taken, I think, what's it now, 5 years of being together. Finally, I think that's the
But
first
it
time I ever did something like that. Yeah.
but it takes time. It
Yeah.
takes time. And I think that, we can push ourselves about getting it right, but I think we have to be more gentle with ourselves. We've taken however many years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years to get to where we are, and then we think we're going to change it in a couple of days. It doesn't work that way. It's kind of like a freight train. It has some momentum to it. It's not going to just stop
Mhm.
on a ticky because you've suddenly decided you want to change things. There's 40 years or 30 years or 20 years or even however many years of momentum. It's why children change so much quicker than adults do, because they've got less momentum. They've only been going for 10 years. So if we can teach our children to have the right mindset, I mean, what an advantage is that?
100%. Yeah. Because creation takes responsibility. It's Yeah, it takes responsibility. That train isn't gonna start stopping or changing direction by itself. Even after 20 years, you've got to take responsibility for whatever you created. In your example with the boats, and in my example with, kind of money mindset, it's responsibility. You have to own up to it, because when you own up to it, you can change. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you keep disowning it, you're on that downward curve. You're just never going to get ahead because you're not facing up to the changes that you have to make within yourself. And at the end of the day, I think the reason why so many people find it so hard to shift mindset is that it's so much easier to stay where we are. It's so much easier to continue being the person that we are.
Mm,
And it's because it takes huge responsibility. How do we respond? Our ability to respond, responsibility to change.
mm, yeah. I was Yesterday I was making a few social media posts for the future sometime, and I also started reading the book Atomic Habits.
Oh, brilliant book.
Yeah, and I just I'm right at the beginning, like I'm not very far in. I just got back to the part where he spoke about becoming 1% better every day. And he shared the math on that, and I checked it out. I Googled like a compound interest calculator. And as it turns out, if you compound 1% every day for a year, you're literally, like, for example, if you have $1 and you compound it daily by 1%, you end up with $37 after 1 year. So just by consciously choosing to improve yourself, any area of your life by 1% every day, you can become 37 times better in a year. And that's just, it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing because people chase overnight change or overnight transformation, when instead we should be chasing the little tiny 1%
The
for habit
small
becoming.
daily habits, those
Yeah.
small daily habits. It's the slight edge is very much, it's like a mixture between
Slight edge, you said.
the slight edge, yeah. It's like a mixture between the compound effect and atomic habits. So he talks about that whole idea of taking a cent and it doubles its value every day for 30 days. So the story he tells is of two sons who give him the choice. The one can take $1 million, or you can take $1 million, or you can take 1 penny that will double its value every day.
Mm.
And the penny doubled its value every day ends up to being, I don't know, 8 or 15, something in the millions compared to the 1 million. And it's that compound effect, that tiny little bit every day. And I always say to my Pilates clients, it's about the little bit you do every day. It doesn't feel like you're doing anything, but over time, compounded, it adds years to your life, because years of mobility to your life. You might die at the same age, but your mobility is so different. And it doesn't matter if it's that or if it is attempting to change your thoughts in just the smallest way every day. Eventually, it shifts you and shifts you and shifts you and shifts you, and you are not the same person. And one of the best ways for changing thoughts is reading for 15 minutes a day, one of these books that you and I have both mentioned and spoken about, a really good self-development book, and just spend 15 minutes a day reading that and see how you change as a person. Because it's just that ongoing, it's that drip, drip, drip of entrepreneurial mindset that seeps into you and you change.
That's one of the things that I fell away with reading a bit towards the end of last year. I just got really busy, which is an excuse. But I've gotten back into the reading, like the reading habit again. And yeah, so far, like I said, I'm not far into atomic habits, but even the example he used of this ice block, and you heat up a block of ice, 1 degree, it will change from 25 to 26 to 27 to 28, and it will seem like nothing happened, like the heat doesn't have an effect. But as soon as it switches from, I think it's 31 to 32 degrees, all of a sudden it starts to melt. And I think that's a concept, like that's science. That's an observable fact. It's that small
Absolutely.
to have a result, and it takes time to build up that kind of energy, that potential energy, which at some point will kind of erupt and explode into whatever it is that you've been building up towards the whole time.
And that's the problem. Whether it's exercise, whatever it is, I kind of think of it as going through life. There's an energy that we push ahead of us, if that makes sense. If you think of a car, it has a wave of energy that it pushes ahead of it because it's pushing all the air molecules. So we have this wave that we send ahead of us. Imagine you're walking down a path, and that wave creates the paving that forms the path that you're walking down. So we have a space ahead of us that has already been paved, because that is the energy that we're working with. That is everything about us that goes ahead of us. And when we want to do something different, we've still got part of that pathway to walk over that's already been paved before we get to the new paving.
Yeah.
And most of us give up before we've even got onto the new paving. We're still on the old paving and we go, this doesn't work. It's not making any difference. But we haven't got to the new stuff yet, because this was laid down before.
Yeah.
This was the pre-paving from our life before. And we have to get past that before we get to the new paving. It just takes There's a bit of a lag. We all lag behind the paving that was laid. But we need to stick at something long enough to be able to get to the new paving. And so often we give up right near the end of the old paving.
Mm. I love
And
that.
if we could just keep going a little bit further, we would hit the new one and we would see the differences starting to happen. But we need to stick at it. That consistency and that persistence is everything.
Yeah. That's a wonderful analogy. I've never heard anything like that before, but it makes a lot of sense. It resonates with me. Rochelle, I have one more question. I think we can kind of tie things up. I'm sure we could speak for hours.
I think so.
I'm not sure if other people will find this as what's the word I'm looking for? Enticing as I do, just to keep speaking about these concepts. And so I think just one thing before we kind of close off, just what do you have any recommendations for people? You've spoken about the habit of reading. Any books or people that people should look up? Any recommendations at all for somebody who's trying to change their mindset, like tips, just anything at all? How can people find that, listen to this conversation and find that 1% that they need to start growing?
There are so many awesome, awesome books and people out there.
Give me
And I
yeah,
think
give me-
Bob Proctor, um, I read Bob Proctor's book, Change Your Paradigm. And he recommends that you read that book for half an hour every day for 60 days. So I decided, okay, I'm going to read it. I read 10 pages a day, which is about 15 minutes of reading, maybe, for 30 days. So I read the book 7.5 times in 30 days. So I finished it. So I'd read it through 8 times over.
Wow.
Everything that we do is done by repetition. It doesn't matter what it is. From learning to walk as a child, you never gave up. Everything's about repetition. So a lot of the time we read a book and we grab another book and we grab another book and we're not ever integrating what we're learning. Sometimes it's better to take a book and read it every day, but if you get to the end of it, start again and really learn from something. Take something out of each thing that you're doing and change your life by putting it into action. So it's awesome for someone who sat and listened to this. Choose one thing and actually do that.
Yeah.
Put it into action, whether it is that you decide to read for 15 minutes, whether it is you decide to, but do something. Because I think the problem that so many of us get locked into is we end up gathering information, but then we just become an encyclopedia. You need to actually take the information and you need to change yourself in some way. It has to become an action.
Mm.
Because if we don't take action, we stay in the fear. Action cures fear. So if you're afraid, I mean, a simple example, packing up my house. I had to pack up a house I'd lived in for too long. And
I can see your face. Yeah.
you get so caught up in the fear, you don't know where to start. Just start with something. It doesn't matter what it is. Take one drawer. Just do something. And you'll find within 10 or 15 minutes, you feel so much better.
Mm.
So action always cures fear. Do something if you're feeling stuck. But you can't do 10 million things. It's wonderful. We sit down and we go, oh, I've got a list of 20 new things I'm going to do this year. You can't do 20 new things. Do one new thing this month and set yourself a challenge each month to integrate one new thing to get you to shift, to get you to become unstuck and to get onto a path of moving forwards.
Yeah.
But take action. I think action cures fear is just such an amazing statement that I use it in so many contexts of my life. You want to do something and there's nervousness, there's apprehension, there's do something. It cures all of that. Just get going.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I think that advice is so simple. That's what I love about it. Just choose one thing and just do it. It just seems like it's hitting you in the face almost how simple it is. But I know that it's incredibly powerful. Rochelle, thank you so much for this conversation. It's just been I mean, of course, we aim to play the game. we didn't play the game, but I love the fact that we created this opportunity and we created this conversation. And in every single sense of how I see the word unstoppable, this conversation was unstoppable. Literally, I think we could speak for hours, which is the literal definition of unstoppable. So thank you so much for this conversation and for sharing your wisdom and your insight and for being so forthright in yeah, sharing your expertise and your journey and who you are. This conversation has meant a lot to me, and I've got my notepad here. I've learned just as much as anybody else listening out there, I'm sure. So I just want to say thank you. Yeah,
Well, Andre, it's been so amazing. Thank you so much for your time and for connecting with me and allowing this conversation. It's been amazing. I just love meeting people like you that just come from the same planet as me, and we could talk for days. So it's been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much.
very welcome. I think we should have a rerun of this at some point and attempt to play the game and see how that goes. You know, just something different. Yeah.
That would be amazing anytime.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna say goodbye to the good people out there. You and I can still stay on for a few minutes. To everybody watching, thank you so much for tuning into Unstoppable Conversations. Uh, yeah, to take Rochelle's advice, watch this episode as many times as you can, as much in as much time as you have, and just keep learning from it and choose one thing from this conversation. Rochelle shared so much insight and value. Choose one thing, latch onto that, and yeah, just do it. All right. Bye, everyone.